Good morning and welcome, everybody. You know, Suba is here from India. She's joining us. It's 12:30 at night, and she's here with us. Isn't that amazing? It just blows my mind. So that's very cool. So, welcome, everybody. And if you have any questions, you can type them in at any time in the chat on the right-hand side, or you don't have to raise your hand. I know there's a raise hand function, but I'll probably miss it. So if you just speak up at any time, that's just fine. So, love having you here. And by the way, this bowl is from one of you. That picture is from one of you, and this picture is from Diane. So thank you so much. You're just all a beautiful part of my life. Some of these books are from some of you as well. So kind of amazing. So, okay, so let me see. The first question was from Amber. And I said I would start with this. And so that was on liberation. And what is liberation in this lineage? And so we concentrate, yogis tend to concentrate a lot on samadhi. And then we think that, well, samadhi is the pinnacle, but it's actually kind of the halfway mark. And if we haven't gone into samadhi, that's like, oh my God, that's only the halfway mark. But don't worry about it. It's not so wondrous as that. So the samadhi is the halfway mark. And then what happens is you start entering into the higher self. Your brain waves start to merge with the gamma brain waves, and that happens over and over and over again. And then it starts to take place outside of the samadhi. So we needed this incredible low idle state. So we needed this incredible low idle state to enable this. We're trying to put our minds on the cosmic Lord. And it's really quite difficult. It is not easy to put our mind on the cosmic Lord perfectly. And so we're trying to expand ourselves to that extent. And so we need this incredible low idle state to enable that. I need the crystal clarity of mind, of heart. I need that low idle state to enable that degree of clarity so I can actually fix not just this much of my mind, but this much of my mind on the cosmic Lord. I need to open myself and surrender and let go to that extent to enable the oneness, right? To enable the non-dual state. So now we get into the samadhi. So we get into the higher self. The beta brainwave curves up and merges with the gamma brainwave. And so you say, I and my Father are one, right? In that state, in the non-dual state. So we needed that incredible low idle state and the clarity it gave us to enable all of that, right? But then, because we're doing this over and over and over again, we hope, because we're doing that over and over again, then we shift into, oh my God, it's happening while I'm walking around. I'm getting some of that while I'm walking around. So some of the cosmic Lord is, I'm not merely reflecting it, right? That's one state. That might happen in the beginning. But now I'm actually getting some merging going on while I'm walking around in my day. And that's the Sahaja Samadhi. And so now our access to the cosmic Lord is increasing. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's the most important thing. Okay, so now our axis is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And is what that's the biggest thing to concentrate on. It is not necessarily, okay, I have to get the non-dual state. You don't need to concentrate on that so much. It's the access to the higher self, which increases and increases and increases. So we enter the low idle state to enable the non-dual, to enable that kind of crystal clarity. And then we get more and more and more access even outside of the non-dual state. And that's the point. So the non-dual state, the pinnacle, has a point, and it's the Sahaja Samadhi. It's the access all the time, right? Because we don't want a love affair with God only in the non-dual state. We want a love affair all the time, our whole life, our whole day. And that's what the Sahaja Samadhi is, or the Sahaja Samadhi therapy, right? That bleeding throughout the day. That's the big deal. So now it's not just something that happens once in my day or twice in my day. It's something that's happening all the time. It's an integral part of my life, right? That access is opening. And so the phrase that I love is Dharma Mega. So Dharma, in this case, means, usually it means righteousness, but in this case it means knowing. So, and Mega means cloud. So it's the cloud of knowing. And that phrase, Dharma Mega, is at the beginning of the Patanjali Sutras, the Yogic Sutras, and they're at the end. So that means it's the bookends of the Yoga Sutras. That's the whole point of the Yoga Sutras, is that one phrase, Dharma Mega. We're connecting to that cloud of knowing. So if you could see the higher self as like the cloud, right? You know, you lose your computer, you lose everything, but it's okay because it's stored in the cloud, right? You don't care. And it's the same thing with the soul, right? The soul is constantly uploading to the higher self, and you lose the body, you don't care, right? Because you've got the backup in the cloud, the Dharma Mega, right? And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to have a non-dual state with that intelligence, that cloud of knowing, that humongous oversoul, as Emerson called it. And then we're trying to open our access so it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then that's our access to the Dharma Mega. So in the Gita, what most yogis refer to is that the Gita says, if at the moment of death, your consciousness is in the Ajna chakra, right? So let's translate that to Kriya. So Ashokji said, do whichever Kriya lodges you the most powerfully into the medulla. So that's what he's talking about. He's talking about the same thing that the Gita is mentioning. If we were to die at that moment, if our consciousness was rolled up and in the Ajna chakra or the medulla or in the brain or at the top of the head, then at that moment, we would have the chance to expand rather than be reborn. So the Gita says this is what leads to liberation, right? And Lahiri Baba, at one point in his life, he was getting samadhi, and he was a little bit worried that he didn't have continuous access to the Dharma Mega, to the point where if he was to die in this moment, would I be able to do that? Would I be able to go into the higher self and merge in the higher self at this moment? Or would I be preoccupied with my life and my worries and yada, 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 yada? If I'm preoccupied with all of that at the moment of transition, right, then I'm going to be reborn. But if I am preoccupied with the Dharma Mega, I am wrapped up in the divine, then my consciousness will merge in that. And that's termed liberation, right? Freedom from the wheel of karma, as Buddha would talk about it. So it's all about the Dharma Mega. It's all about falling in love with that intelligence and opening your access to a continuous access, right? That's what it's all about. So I hope that helps.
So, what I'm hearing is, in essence, we can't really have a confirmed liberation until the moment of death, more or less.
Um, I would just think of, so how much access do I have to the
Right.
intelligence of the divine? If you have a continuous access, then you have it. And so at one point in Lahir Mashai's life, he was worried. He's like, I don't think I have that. And I don't think I don't think it stressed him out, but it was something that he really wanted to make sure I have that continuous access. And then later on, he didn't worry about it, right? So he had confirmed to himself, oh, I have that continuous access, that that integration between me and the higher self is taking place. It's like I'm in that vastness, that expansiveness so often that, oh, it's confirming to me I'm okay, right? So that and that's something that the higher self itself will communicate with you. Hey, you're okay. So that's also can be reassuring. So it's all about merging the conscious mind into the superconscious mind, right? You're lifting yourself up, right? And so the pathway is always down to go up. And that's why we go into the low idle state, and then we begin to get those higher self perceptions. All right. So now so that's the first question. The second question was about the tranquil breath and kumbhak. And let me see if I can read it because it was a little bit intricate. Rajesh said, one question from my side. I equate tranquil breath to organic kumbhak. Broadly speaking, kumbhak are of two types: inhalation, and after exhalation. In some of the higher kriyas, the instruction is to perform japa inside of kumbhak, which this is correct. I cannot organically hold inside kumbhak for extended periods of time, but I can be in the tranquil breath outside of kumbhak for many minutes and do kriyas. So he's asking about those two things, right? Which is a brilliant kriya question. So the purpose of getting into the tranquil breath, we would like, so any tranquil breath is amazing. And Lahiri Baba very clearly says, when the tranquil breath shows up, stop the kriya, right? Stop the doing and start doing the being at that moment, right? Because we want to open that pathway inside of ourselves, in our body, our subconscious, which those are basically the same thing, and also our conscious mind recognizing it, and the superconscious enabling everything. So we want to recognize the tranquil breath, sit with the tranquil breath, be with the tranquil breath as much as possible. And every time we do that, whether it's the tranquil breath or the freeze response, the roll up of consciousness, bliss, joy, tranquility, every time we sit with those, we're opening our access. Oh, I think I feel the intelligence of the divine. I have a feeling of it. We sit with it, and that opens our access. So all of it is opening access, right? We could say that all that we're doing is opening access. So as we sit with the beginning tranquil breath, right? We've got that shallow breath that's way down here in the diaphragm. The chest becomes slightly frozen, and then it becomes very frozen, right? And so that breath in the diaphragm is very shallow. And in the beginning, the body doesn't have as much access down here. It's just beginning that breath. And so it's kind of a shallow breath, and it can be a little bit quick. It can be so quick, you're like, that doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like this should be the tranquil breath. But it is. It's the beginning of that tranquil breath. It's a shallow, sometimes a quick breath. And then it gets moderate, right? It starts to slow down. So we wanted that early access, so we get the middle access. And then it slows down, and you go, oh my God, where'd it go? Where's my breath? And then it goes by. You go, oh, there it is. There's the breath. And then it disappears. You go, oh my God, it's gone. I'm not breathing. This is kumbhak. This is the real kumbhak, right? And so in the Tranquil breath training, I talk about, okay, we're going to establish heart rate variability resonance. And we want that as our base. Because when you do a breath hold, it's going to spike your sympathetic system a little bit. It's going to spike your blood pressure. It's going to come up. And you want to come back down into the tranquil breath, if you can, when you relax. So that's something we hope that is there largely, right? We hope that we're establishing a lot of the did I say tranquil breath? We want to come back into heart rate variability resonance. That's our base. We want to come back into that as often as possible. In fact, you might be walking around in your house and then you sit on the couch and you go, oh, I'm in heart rate variability resonance. I'm not even trying, and my body is doing it. And this is the transformation of the body through yoga, right? And then you're walking around and you go, oh, I'm in heart rate variability resonance while I'm walking around. And then you go and you sit and you go and you watch a movie with your family, let's say, and you go, oh my God, I'm in the freeze response and the tranquil breath, and I'm not even trying. I'm just watching a movie. And that's the transformation of the body that yoga is accomplishing. So we want that resonance, the heart rate variability resonance as our base. And then we hold the breath, and that will spike the blood pressure. And then the blood pressure will drop, and we'll go into heart rate variability resonance again. And now the two of them, the tranquil. So okay, so there's the heart rate and the blood pressure are doing this all the time. So when your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure will go down. And as your heart rate goes down, your blood pressure will go up because they're trying to create balance. They're a teeter-totter. So how do you get both sides of a teeter-totter to go down? Well, you can't, right? So you push on one, you're like, okay, I've got that low. And then you push on the other, and it's like, okay, I got that low. And you're just back and forth. It's kind of a riddle for the yogi. And so the way that the yogis solve this riddle on purpose is they will do both. They do heart rate variability resonance, and then they do some blood pressure variability resonance. So they do a long breath, and then they hold the breath. And then they do a long breath, and then they hold the breath. And the whole thing starts to come down like a teeter-totter. So it starts out here, and they take it down bit by bit by bit by bit by doing both of those. And that's one of the ways that we train our body and our breath to go from the short tranquil breath into the longer moderate tranquil breath into the very long tranquil breath that begins to disappear. So that's how we train ourselves, right? That's how we train the body. And that's going to accomplish what the yogis call kumbhak. That means the breath has stopped. It either pauses at the top or it pauses at the bottom. So in the very beginning, we were training the breath. We took out the pauses. And now in the tranquil breath, the pauses come back. And they're good. And they get very long. And we could call that kumbhak. It's just a very long tranquil breath. So it's easier to just think of everything. Everything is the tranquil breath. And when they say kumbhak, like a real kumbhak, I don't mean I'm holding my breath. That's the training of the kumbhak. The real kumbhak is, well, the deep, deep tranquil breath. Do you see? That's what nobody explains, right? Nobody, or if they do, it's kind of hard to follow. Maybe they say it a little bit, but nobody really gets into that to explain that because they don't understand or they don't explain this progression of the tranquil breath, right? So now you have that. That's humongous. Just to understand that is absolutely humongous. in terms of training your breath, training your body, and training Kriya. All right, so Rajesh, you're talking about I can't do a really long breath hold as the higher Kriya is asking me to do. What about I'm in the tranquil breath and I just do what the Kriya is asking me to do? Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I have students, some of you, who have written me or called me and told me, I got into the tranquil breath and I just decided that while I'm in the tranquil breath, I'm going to do Om Japa. So I'm not messing with my breath, right? I just let the breath ride. It's doing its own thing in the tranquil breath. I let it be. And while it's doing that, I'm over here with my dorsal vagal and I'm just doing Om Japa in the chakras up and down. So I just go into one and I Om, and then I go into another and I Om, and I go into another, and I just kind of float around and I just Om into the chakras. And I told them, you are intuitively understanding and doing a higher Kriya. And this is something that I've heard from more than one lineage and more than one wonderful, so one is, I forget his name. I can see his face. I can't remember his name. I'll remember it later. But one of them said it perfectly. If you have some of the Kriya and you really love it, you're really devoted to it, higher Kriyas, will spontaneously come to you. And I've seen it in my own life, and I've seen it in my students' lives over and over again. They will intuitively understand what they need to do. And a lot of times my job is they call me up and they say, is this good? And I say, yes. I just confirm things for them. That's it. And they already know because they're listening to the inner guru. Remember, we roll up into the medulla, and that's the sitting at the feet of the true guru. That's it. It's inside. It's not outside. It's inside. Right? You guys know this. So you're getting that. You are intuitively understanding that in this question. You're like, I'm having trouble with the formal Kriya, but I'm doing this informal process and it seems like it's right and I see the parallel. That's really deep. Super deep that you're seeing that. Absolutely. Yes, 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 definitely. And then had a wonderful question. I'm reading from another book and he's labeling these deep, deep states. And everybody loves to label these deep, deep states, and it's worthwhile, and at the same time it's kind of hilarious because you get in those deep states and you're like, well, is this cosmic consciousness, or is this God consciousness, or is this transcendent? And at a certain point you're like, I don't know, man, I just love it. It's kind of like being a lover, and you're kind of like, so, is like, where's our relationship? Are we like at the, are this kind of love, or is it this kind of love, or is it this kind of love? And at a certain point, you just go, man, I don't know. This is just freaking wonderful. I just love you, man. That's the kind of love that we want, right? It doesn't really matter that much, but I totally get the question, and everybody, I mean, a lot of yogis try to classify these things. But your question was really about, so this guy is saying that there's cosmic consciousness, and then there's God consciousness, and then there's just pure transcendence, which is beyond God consciousness. And you're thinking, well, I thought God is everything. So why are you saying that we're going past God? That doesn't really make sense. And so we could refer to Christianity. And Christianity says, okay, well, there's God the Father, and then there's God the Son, and then there's the Holy Spirit. And it's three gods in one, right? So this is what I'm saying. Like, everybody tries to classify this. And for the Christians, this is such a riddle, right? And they have theologians that wrestle with this for like their whole lives, and they come up with a very good answer. Like, and some of them are intuitive, and they're very, very right and good answers. And yet it's still a struggle. It's like this thing it's a riddle, right? And you're trying to understand actually the whole universe. Like, how did God set this up? And so Yogananda said that you've got a spirit, which is transcendent, and then you've got the consciousness of the divine reflected in this dream world, right? That would be God the Son, the Christ consciousness. So you could say God the Father consciousness, then you could say, or you could say spirit, like Yogananda said it. This was spirit, it was transcendent. And then you've got God the Son, which is the Christ consciousness, and then you have the Mother, or the Om vibration, which is the active expression of that consciousness in the universe. And then underneath that, you would have ether, and then you would have air, and then you would have fire, and then you would have water, and then you would have earth. You would have all of the elements and everything that makes everything that we're looking at, right? But behind everything that we're looking at, we know that there's ether. And behind that ether, we know that there's this vibration. And then behind that vibration, we know there is a vast intelligence which is directing all of it. And then that's only a reflection of the higher transcendent spirit, which is all one, right? So you get up to the top and you look back and you go, well, it's all one, right? But it's kind of a ladder, right? So that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to understand the entire universe with those labels. So you can encounter some of this in your like very, very deep samadhis. There are levels to it. And so you feel at one point like I've connected to something vast and huge and beautiful. And then another layer goes and you're like, oh, now I've connected to something even vaster and bigger and more beautiful and more glorious. And then you connect, and then just, whew, it starts getting very transcendent. And so you put another label on it, right? But it's all one. It's all God. It's all the Dharma Mega. So you could actually, you could take that all the way down and say, well, this is the Dharma Mega too, right? Because it's made of the Dharma Mega, right? So think of, the divine, right? Up there in heaven, right? I'm going to make the universe, and I don't have anything. Shoot, like, what am I going to make it from? Well, I've got me, so I just use me, and here's the universe, right? So it's all me, right? So there was only the divine in the beginning, right? So like everything is made of the divine. Isn't that crazy? So, great question. And let's look at our now, Justin, you were asking, because we had a conversation about resting in tranquility versus doing in tranquility, and we already started that conversation. So let me just bring that up real quick, and then I'm going to go through all of the questions. You're so welcome. You're so welcome, Denise. So in the beginning, Lahiri Baba says, hey, just stop when you see the tranquil breath. And again, that is opening your access to it, right? So we see the tranquil breath, and if we don't want to ride over it, because now we're putting the cart before the horse, right? So, okay, here's my tranquil breath, and I'm going to run it over with my Kriya or my heart rate variability resonance. I'm going to run it over. Like, that would be a mistake, right? So we don't want to do that. We want to recognize the tranquil breath and like embrace it and suck it into ourselves. And that's going to make it come back next time a little bit bigger. And then we hug that, right? We hug that tranquil breath. And then it comes back the next time a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And it gets bigger inside of us just by being with it. The same thing with bliss. It might be your little tiny bliss. It's like, this is, Forrest, really? This is not that big. And I'm like, no, hug it. You hug it to your heart. This is beautiful. Trust me. And so you're like, okay, I'm going to get in there and like squeeze this tiny little bliss. And then the next time you come back, it goes like this, right? Your access opens and you go, okay, Forrest, I'm kind of getting what you're saying. This is, yeah, okay. And so you hug it to your heart. You hold it. You hold that bliss, right? And then the next time it gets bigger and you go, oh, okay, now I get it, because you're opening your access. And so that's what we want to do with the tranquil breath in the beginning. We want to begin to open our access. But at a certain point, you might go, okay, well, I've really opened up my access. I've been doing that for like a month, let's say, or maybe 2 months or 3 months. And I'm getting that. I'm opening my access to the tranquil breath, but it's not deepening. What do I need to do? Well, the breath holds, right? So you can have the tranquil breath, and then you can do a breath hold, right? So I can breathe in, hold the breath, and rest. And I don't want to be in a meditation and really, 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 really push myself, but I can push myself a little bit. And so the heart rate will go up, the blood pressure will spike a little bit, and then we relax right away. We relax and recover, and we sink back down into heart rate variability resonance. And with a little time, we sink into the tranquil breath again. And now we come back to the tranquil breath, and we notice not only do we have access, but it has deepened. Maybe it's turned into a little bit more of the moderate tranquil breath. And so now we're using blood pressure variability resonance, and we're using CO2 tolerance to increase our tranquil breath, right? And so that is an expanding of the tranquil breath, which can be very helpful. But in the beginning, we don't want to, if we do that too soon, we wipe out our access. We didn't open our access. So if all we've got is this much tranquil breath, we don't want to run it over with a program. We just want to enjoy it. Same thing with bliss. If it's very small, it's like we don't want to run out and do something else with that bliss. We just want to hold it. We just want to open our access a little bit, like make it something that's a little bit, it's mine. You want to make it your own. And then you can go on increasing it, right? Doing a program, right? So there's a little bit of play inside of the Paravasta. And so you're doing a version of do, be over and over again, even in Paravasta. You can open up that access a little bit wider once you've stayed with it for a little bit. So that's a way to develop the tranquil breath. Great question, Justin. Thank you. And so, what do we have? What do we have over here? Thank you, Nalish. Joffrey, what is your experience of Hong Sa? How long do you practice it daily? What is the most time you have ever spent doing Hong Sa every day? I did a lot of Hong Sa in the beginning when I was in the ashram. And I have a funny story. I was on a work program. We were working at a retreat, and we worked the whole day, hard physical labor. And I came back to the ashram. I was dead tired. I really was so exhausted that I could have laid down and fallen asleep like that. And I thought, no, I'm going to sit. I'm going to do my 6 Kriya. I don't even think I can do more. Like, I'm just going to sit and do 6 Kriya. So I sat down in my meditation chair, and I started to practice Kriya. But I was so exhausted that I forgot to practice Kriya, and I started practicing Hong Sa eventually, automatically. So those of you who don't know Hong Sa is very simple. So I would always I would recommend, when the first time I started, so now I'm mixing up my stories, sorry, but the first time that I did Hong Sa, I controlled the breath, and I had a wonderful experience with it. And then I was not so bright because I went back to the instructions that were given to me, and they said, don't control the breath. So I'm like, oh, I'm messing up. So I went back and I did Hong Sa again, and I didn't control the breath. I didn't get into heart rate variability resonance, right? And so I didn't have a wonderful experience. And so I was left there wondering forever, like, how did I mess up my Hong Sa? Because the first time I did it, it was incredibly peaceful. Like, where did I mess up? And it was that the very first time I did it, I actually controlled the breath. So there's two different ways you can practice it there. So with the in-breath, you say Hong to yourself mentally, and with the out-breath, you say Sa. And you just watch the breath, right? So the breath comes in, you say Hong. Breath goes out, you say Sa. It's a wonderful little practice, and it can be very effective. And so you can do that with heart rate variability resonance, making the breath long, making the out breath longer. and right away it will give you wonderful, wonderful results. And that's the first way that I practiced it ever. And it had fantastic results. But after a while, you want to let go of controlling your breath, and then the instruction, just watch the breath and do that. Hong, sa. Or you could do om. You could om. You could do om. Or you could do hong sa. But that's the hong sa technique. And so back to my story. I was in my room completely exhausted. I forgot to do the Kriya, and I automatically started doing hong sa. And I looked at myself and I thought, you know what? I'm so tired. I don't even care. This is great. This is feeling kind of good anyway. So I'll just go with it. So I kept doing the hong sa. And pretty soon I was in the tranquil breath, and there was no breath to do hong sa with. And I thought, oh my God, my breath is gone, right? And that's when I had that huge experience that the whole room started spinning. And I opened my eyes, and I expected my whole room to be doing this, and it wasn't. It was just internal. But that was the third knot. That was the first time I experienced that. And then it happened regularly in, not all the time, but it would happen every once in a while in my meditations. And then I went to one of the monks and I said, what is this? And he said, well, you were sleeping, because I told him that story, right? You were sleeping. Anything could have happened. And I was so mad. I felt like he was dismissing me, right? Because I was just, I think I was a novice at the time, right? So I was just a young monk, and he kind of dismissed me as if you couldn't have had a deep experience or anything like that. It was just your sleep, kind of like this. And I was so mad. I'm like, thank you very much. And I just left, right? And I never asked him anything ever again. But it was good. It was actually kind of divine, because it forced me to stop looking to other people as being able to answer my questions. And I'm like, damn it, I'll answer my own questions. Thank you very much. And I did. So kind of cool. Part of the program, I guess. But it was so funny. But anyway, that's a hong sa experience. So I used to practice it quite a bit when I was in the ashram. But eventually I fell in love with Kriya more. And so the Om Japa Kriya and the heart rate variability resonance are just divine. And the Kriya is designed to be this long breath, right? And that's why all these lineages say, well, you have to do the Kriya this long. And what they're trying to say is, you've got to make it long, right? So if you can't make it this long, well, make it this long, and then make it this long, and then make it this long. But you're trying to get into this long breath because that's what gives you heart rate variability resonance, right? So whatever technique we're doing, we want that nice long breath, right? So when we're in the technique, now when the tranquil breath shows up, we just drop the technique, because we're not going to do, you can't do the being and the doing at the same time. You got to do one or the other, right? So you want that transition into the being. But I love hong sa. It's great, especially when you put it with heart rate variability resonance. And I know everybody wants these questions like, how much should I do? And it's a decent question. I understand where you're coming from. And my answer is always, you've got to watch the peak of your interest. So you're going to have, like, I have all this, I've got it, it gets inside of you, right? The yoga desire gets inside of you. You're like, I got to do it. And then, some of that is, I have this great experience with it. And so I got to get back there, right? And so that's your steam, and your steam is going to push you, and you're going to do. And at a certain point, you're like, okay, you exhausted the fire in your love, right? The fire in your heart. You exhausted it. And then you're like, your mind takes over, and you say, well, I got to push. And that's where people hate their practice over years, right? That's where they start to hate. So my thing is, okay, you reached your peak of what is good for you. And now you've got to think about, well, I'm going to wind down. I'm going to wind out of my meditation because I'm past my peak. My fire is gone. And now it's just my brain saying I have to push. And I've talked to so many yogis that told me I used to push myself for hours, and it was horrible. And now I really concentrate on skill and making it good, right? And having a deep experience. And so I'm going for shorter sessions. It might be, for some people, it would be long, but for them, it's short. I'm going for a shorter session, but better session. And it works. It works so wonderfully. And you keep your fire, you keep your love, because that's what's going to sustain you. It's like, it's like a YouTube career. If you don't have a love for what you're doing, you're not going to sustain it, because people will say things to you and you'll just quit. So you got to have that fire. You got to have some kind of love in the game, right? You got to have some skin in the game. And so you got to have your skin in the game for meditation. And then you're going to, it's going to curb, right? It's going to start to go down. And that's a good time to wrap up the practice. Doesn't mean you have to stop right there, but begin to wrap up, because the fire, you spent the fire that you had, right? That's my very best advice for time. All right. Amber says, so privately, we discussed waviness of perception as a symptom of meditation, and I like the floor getting wavy and so on. I'm curious if this is related to the theta wave activation. So theta is a great question. So as we go into meditation, things get a little weird, right? So you've got this kind of GPS in your left brain, which kind of scans the body, and it says, okay, you've got an ache over here, and you've got an ache over there. You might want to pay attention to that, right? And so it's kind of like Google Maps. Google Maps goes out and it gets information and brings it back to my map and says, well, there's a lot of cars in front of you. You're going to slow down for about 13 minutes. It's never 13 minutes. It's more like 25, right? But at least it's something, right? And so that's Google Maps, and that's what your left brain is doing. It's actually the parietal lobe, which is doing that and bringing it back. And so you put that into the map, and the map is created by your temporal lobe. Your temporal lobe is creating the map, the actual map of your body, right? Which we would call the astral form. And so all of that gets weird when you enter into meditation, because it starts to shut down. You start to shut down the GPS and you shut down the map, and all that mapping gets weird. So you say, oh my God, my head is up here and my body's down here, or my leg is over here and my head is over here, or, it's this way. And so really fun perceptions start happening in the freeze response, right? And so I think that's what we were talking about, kind of this, well, my body's getting like waviness and I'm feeling energy. So now you've got, the shutdown of that mapping system, and then you've got the subconscious energy feelings, and those are coming together. It's like, wow, this can be really wild. So it can be really fun and interesting. And so is that related to the theta? Well, you're getting into the subconscious, which is enabling some of that energy feeling. Theta is very much the easiest way to think about theta is that when you're having a dream, the theta brainwave is the screen that the dream is projected on. So in other words, if you don't have theta, there's no dream. You can't see the dream, right? So theta is the movie screen. And very interestingly, that same theta screen, if you have a vision from the higher self, right? So the information is not coming from the subconscious. The knowing or the intuition is coming from the higher self, and it hits on the theta, and you have a vision. That vision is taking place because you have the theta brainwave up and running. And that's why I talk about, well, we've got to get into trance, right? When we're doing meditation, we got to get into a trance. Like one of my students was trying to do the third training, right? Which is the speaking with the higher self, talking with the higher self training. So he's trying to do those exercises. And in those exercises, you have to have some of those slower brainwaves up and running. So we're trying to induce that. And he just couldn't do it. Just couldn't do it to save his life. And I kept giving him suggestions. It didn't work. So finally I told him, okay, very much like the experience I just told you, I said, wait to do your meditation and wait to do this exercise until you are dead tired. I mean, stay up late and get dead tired. And he did. And it worked. It worked like a dream. So suddenly, the subconscious brainwaves that he couldn't get running were running because he's dead tired. So he forced himself into a trance state, and suddenly everything works correctly. And we want those subconscious brainwaves available And this is how we feel energy in the body as well. Those subconscious brainwaves are up and running, they're available, and that is what gives us the ability to feel the energy and also have a vision. So that's what the theta is for. And the waviness, it could be alpha, could be theta, could be delta, could be all three. So yeah, all of those running are what enables those feelings of what is going on inside of the body. Great question.
Also, I didn't mean to say I like the waveness. That was a typo.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. Wonderful. Scott, is the big bliss a samadhi or the very beginnings towards it? The non-dual state is really in the right brain. This is a great question, by the way. But the bliss is so huge. Now, that's a really good question, because the big bliss is so big and so overwhelming that it's possible that you have so much bliss and so overwhelming that you don't have anywhere to go. You just go into a non-dual state. So you could think that the bliss is such a magnet that it might magnetize you all the way up into the higher self, into the right hippocampus, into a non-dual state. Absolutely, that could happen. And what's so interesting, see, when I first figured out what is the secret of samadhi, so you guys ready? Here's the secret of samadhi. It's the right hippocampus. And what is the secret of the right hippocampus? Expansion. And I don't mean a concept. I mean the feeling of I'm getting into it. I am intuitively feeling and getting into expansion. That is the secret of the right hippocampus. Whether it's spaciousness or nothingness or the vast intelligence of the divine, the Dharma Mega, all of those work to awaken the right hippocampus. And it's that awakening of the right hippocampus that sucks us into the non-dual state when it's profound. And so we go back and we do it over and over again, and we grow it. We grow our access, right? And that's what gets us into it. But first we had to go into the low idle state to enable the clarity to do a process like that, right? That's the whole secret right there. Boom. Oh my God. So when I first figured that out, I'm like, my brain exploded, my life exploded at that moment. And so I was all about the right hippocampus. And then I found out, well, if you combine that with bliss, it goes faster. So Kriya was always right. Bliss, bliss, bliss. My lineage is all about bliss, bliss, bliss. Ashokji was never impressed with anything unless you told him about bliss. It's like, oh, I had this energy experience. Okay. I saw Shiva. Good. That's great. That's great. I had bliss. Oh my God, you had bliss. It was this small. I don't care. It's wonderful. He loved hearing about bliss because in the koshas, right? The kosha, the system of Russian dolls that are inside of us, the sheaths, that's what koshas are, right? The sheaths that hide the true us. Bliss is the last one, right before the divine, right? So it's such a beautiful marker. It's like I'm on track because I have bliss. He was never impressed. That's so cool. I didn't know you could do that. Somebody put a heart. That was so cool. Thank you. I didn't even know we could do that. That was beautiful. Made my day. Okay, so so bliss is such a perfect marker to let. That's so awesome. Oh, you guys are gonna kill me. That's awesome. Oh my God, thank you. Okay. It's inducing bliss in me. So okay, I'm gonna close my eyes. So what was I trying to say? So bliss is such a perfect marker. It'll cause you to let go of everything, as you can see. And so if you're hanging on to bliss and then you do a little bit of expansion, and then you do bliss, and then you do expansion, they kind of ping off of each other and they grow each other. And so I did an experiment. I'm like, can I get into samadhi that way? Yes. So I would do expand. So I went into my best meditation, right? And then I started doing an immaterial meditation. So I did my very best. I have tranquil breath, freeze response, roll up of consciousness. And now I'm just going to put my mind and feeling and my intuition on expansion, right? So I'll go into expansion, right? And I'll feel that expansion. I'll get a strong feeling of connection with expansion. And then I will go into a blissful exercise. So I would do the angel exercise, but you could do anything. So I will do the angel exercise and I will connect to bliss. And then I'll go back and the expansion will be bigger. And then I'll go back to the bliss and the bliss will be bigger. And I went back and forth and back and forth. And then you go into the non-dual state. And so it's an amazing technique. So bliss and expansion work wonderfully. Now, very interestingly, the Buddhists concentrate so beautifully on nothingness, right? Some of them. They really get into nothingness. And because they sit and they meditate for years and years and they concentrate so beautifully on nothingness, they go into a non-dual state of nothingness. And then that's it sometimes, right? Because I didn't have any of the insurance of Navi, of Mahamudra, of doing the Om Japa, Kriya. They didn't have any of that insurance. And so they just go into nothingness and they stay there for a very long time. And they go, that's it? And it's not. It's one layer. And the intelligence of the divine is behind that. And so the yogis say, if you as a yogi get into that state, okay, that's fine, but it's not perfect yet because you didn't have the bliss. And so what will happen in the brain is you go so deeply into the right hippocampus that it overloads the right amygdala, which is why we're doing Navi. We're doing Navi to shrink the right amygdala. You overload that. And then some of that energy, that charge that's built up in the right hippocampus, it crosses the anterior commissure, goes over to the left amygdala, and boom, the left amygdala lights up. So the first time you're using your whole brain. You're using the right side of your brain, which is the right hippocampus, and you're using the left amygdala at the same time. And the yogis say, now you have a perfect samadhi. And when the samadhi hits you in the non-dual state, there's nothing interrupting it. So you can feel that big bliss when you're not in a non-dual state. And it's huge and it's overwhelming, and it will feel like, when it's really, really big, it feels like I am a dust particle and I'm about to be blown into, I don't know where. I'm about to disintegrate from bliss. And so a little bit of bliss hits you, you're like, oh, this is great. You hit a little more hits you, you're like, oh, wow. And then a lot hits you and you're like, oh my God, I think it's too much. And so that's kind of the waves of bliss that can hit you in the very, very big, like a pure connection with the left amygdala. And so when that hits you in the non-dual state, there's nothing in the way. And it feels crystalline bliss, like the purest, most beautiful, divine thing you ever touched, right? That's the bliss in the non-dual state, in the samadhi. And so the yogis say, when that happens, we know the whole thing is done, right? The whole process of the what I call the enlightenment pathway, that's done, right? That's the perfect samadhi. And I know we're mixing a lot of terms, like we talked about liberation and now enlightenment pathway. Does that mean that you're fully enlightened and liberated? Not necessarily. That's the samadhi, and then you want access to that all the time, and that's what gives you access to the Dharma Mega, and that ensures that your consciousness is going to go into the Dharma Mega, and that's what we would call, the yogis would call, liberation. Now the Buddhists, I think it was the Buddhists that came up with this term enlightenment, and they use it very loosely. Like some of the wonderful Buddhist lineages like Zen use this enlightenment very, very loosely. And so they can be describing what I would call a download. Like they're sitting in front of the lake and like something comes together and they get some access to the right brain, right? The right hippocampus, and the knowingness explodes inside of them. That's a download. And they go, oh my God, I was enlightened, which is beautiful. I love it. I would say, yes, that's a kind of enlightenment. But the yogi would say, well, that's great. It's beautiful. It's perfect. And yet it's not liberation, right? Because you don't have continuous access. And a wonderful, wonderful question, Scott. I hope that I gave a good answer. I gave some answer. Siddhant says, is it possible to have non-attachment as a householder before experiencing any samadhi? Yeah, that's a good question, because I don't think if you're going to have non-attachment before the samadhi, perfect to have non-attachment as a householder before experiencing any samadhi. Well, you could be looking for in yourself, like, can I be perfectly detached before samadhi? And I would say nothing is ever perfect. So don't try to make it perfect, and just keep going down the road that I'm setting out for you, which is, okay, do I have the tranquil breath? Do I have the freeze response? Do I have the roll up of consciousness? And that's going to put you on the edge of absorption and samadhi, right? And so keep coming back to that again and again. So are you going to be perfectly detached? I don't think so. And I think that that's what the Gita is actually saying. So the Gita says, okay, we do this, we do this, we do this. And then way, way, way down the line, it starts talking about renunciation, right? For example, in this whole process that we're talking about in samadhi, the yogi will become fixated on samadhi. But once you have enough samadhis, you go, yeah, samadhi. Samadhi's great. I love samadhi. But you're not fixated on it anymore. And so there's a renunciation that is naturally occurring, right? So you begin to renounce the samadhi, right? Because it was never about the samadhi. It was about the Dharma Mega. And you fall in love with the Dharma Mega. And that's the process, right? But so, so it's a continuous, so can it be perfect before samadhi? No, because we're even attached to the samadhi and then we let go of the samadhi. Isn't that crazy? So you just keep following, and it's a natural unfolding of letting go, of renunciation. So the real renunciation is not because you're wearing a robe. That means nothing. Trust me, nothing. It's all an internal process that happened because you followed this whole thing, right? You went through this process, and you even let go of the samadhi, and you even let go, they say, of the sanyama, the process of that, right? Because you're just getting more and more access, and so you let go of the trappings. It doesn't become about the process anymore. I use the process to get to the Dharma Mega, and then I let go of the process. It's just about the Dharma Mega. It's about this and the Dharma Mega, right? I am rolling with the ocean, and that's all I care about, right? That's it. So yeah, no, I would say don't worry about that. But wonderful, great question. Oh, Jeff, you are a beautiful gem too. Absolutely. Thank you very much. And Siddhant says, what will be the best way to count pranayamas in one's practice? So you can count on a mala, or you can count on the pads of your fingers. So in Korea, we like to do 12. So you got 4 fingers, 3 pads on each finger. So that's 12. So this is how I count. I go like this. Now, some of you have told me wonderfully, Forrest, I get in the freeze. I don't even want to count. So you can count mentally, which is also great. One yogi told me a great technique. He will count in like 3s or 4s. So he'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then he'll throw that into the back of his mind. And then it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, throw that into the back of his mind. 1, 2, 3, 4, throw that into the back of his mind. That's 12, right? So that's how he will count. That's wonderful as well. When you want to keep the freeze. But the purpose of counting your kriya or your pranayama is to keep a little bit of the conscious mind active, because you don't want to fall asleep. So we're trying to maintain this delicate balance of brainwaves. I want to go down into the subconscious and bring all of those online, but I want to balance it between the conscious mind so that the subconscious does not overtake the conscious mind, right? But I don't want the conscious mind to overtake the subconscious, right? So that's what I call the gauntlet of sleep, right? We're trying to balance those two. And then we reflect the higher self, and then we actually merge with the subconscious a little by little. And now we're reflecting. So if we merge with the subconscious, who is reflecting the divine? You are. You're reflecting the divine. And that's what in the Bible they say Moses spoke to God face to face. That was enabled because Moses had gone through merging with the subconscious. And so he became the subconscious, and the higher self The information comes down and he is right there. It's face to face. Isn't that beautiful? So that's how that happens. And that's why we count, to maintain that delicate balance as we're going through that. And if you have that, so if you're counting and there's too much conscious mind, then you should probably count more loosely, right? And if you're counting and it's too loose and there's too much subconscious, you might want to count more rigorously, right? To maintain the balance. So that's something that you can kind of work with. Wonderful question. And Scott says, you describe it perfectly. It's an overwhelming bliss, an avalanche of bliss pouring on top of you. Wow. Beautiful, Scott. Yes, that's exactly it. And so when it really hits you, it will incapacitate you. Beautiful, beautiful. Sometimes I get like this much. It's like, okay, that's too much. And I kind of like limit my access a little bit just so I can get up and function. So beautiful, beautiful. And that was an hour. Amazing. Love you guys. Does anybody have a last question, which is totally okay?
I wanted to point out Alexander's question may have been skipped over.
Oh, did I skip? Does this stream of or fire of love to meditate have something to do with sexual energy? That's a great question. There is libido in everything that we do because it's part of the system. And so it's your reserve of energy, right? So everything that you do is supported. So like, here's a good way to think about it. When you read the Bhagavad Gita, it was not, okay, well, Bhima's okay because he's the heart. And, the wise brother, he's okay because he's in the throat. But these lower Pandava brothers, we don't want them. That was not the case. All 5 fought in the war. And so you bring all of that to bear on everything that you do. And so there is libido in everything, right? Because that's the first and the second chakra, right? And then you've got the third chakra. That's Arjuna, the hero of the story. He's this lower chakra because he's the one that has to decide, will I go down into more fear and more desire for things and escape, right? Or will I go up into the heart, right? Arjuna is the one who decides. That's why in the Bhagavad Gita, he's the hero, right? And so all of that has to come and bear. So yeah, absolutely. There is some libido in that. And so you're going to use it up in your meditation, and then it's going to go down. And that's when you don't want to overextend yourself over and over and over again, which leads to bad habits, bad meditative habits. We start to split, right? Part of us is here with what we want to do, and then part of us is thinking about all the things we need to do, right? And so now our consciousness has been split. And that's what we want to avoid. Great question.
I have one question, Forrest.
Yes.
When you sit for meditation, recently this has happened that when I sit and finish the kriyas, and when I sit, that is just for very, very small, some seconds or something. It seems as if waves of light keep happening in front of me.
Yeah.
Is that the same which you were talking about today in your video today of YouTube on Friday that you talked?
That's it.
So is it the same thing, or is it just I'm just
No.
having some sort of sleep after that?
No, that's it. That's it. The waves are coming, and so they can look like they're here. They can look like they're here. They might look like a spiral.
Yeah.
But
so they are here, but they're for very few seconds, and they don't last very long, and they just come and just go away. And that's not every day. It happens once in 5 days, 10 days, something like that. It's not frequent.
Yeah. When you are profoundly letting go, it's kind of like we show up, we sit down to meditate. It's like, okay, okay, I let everything go, right? And to a certain degree, we have. And then we do the heart rate variability resonance, and whoa, now I'm letting go. I'm really letting go now. And then you get some of that tranquility, just kind of edges into you, right? And then at some point you just go, man, I am really letting go. And that's what you're experiencing. That profound level of, I thought I was letting go, and now I'm really, and it's really hard because our whole life, our whole story, our whole history, our whole memory of our entire life, the in timeline therapy, it's even your past lives, which you are holding through the left brain. You're letting go of all of that, and that deep experience of the spiritual eye is just cluing you in to the degree that you are letting go. Or you could say, you're getting blissed out, aren't you?
Your bliss just opens up, even on the screen.
I know, right?
I get so beautiful.
You guys were about to, with all those hearts, you guys were about to have just a bliss show. No talking, just a bliss. There you go.
Yeah, get one more.
Oh my God, so awesome. Okay, so yeah, definitely, you're letting go so profoundly. And think about this. Lahiri Baba said that he would pray to the what's the name, the god of the sun? You guys know it. Somebody's going to say it. The god of the sun.
Suryadev.
Yes.
Ra.
Yeah. And so he would pray. He would say, this is the soul sun, right? He called it the soul sun. So you're seeing the spiritual eye. That can be your Ishta. And your Ishta is... So I had this beautiful experience that... I know, right? And I had this beautiful experience that came down and kissed my forehead. And I just felt like this... My heart just exploded at that moment, right? And I had a beautiful, deep experience. And so that's your Ishta. The soul sun is coming to you, and you're beginning to merge with it, right? Which is an apt description of what's actually going on. So it means you're letting go so profoundly of the left brain to enable that to happen. It's a big deal, really big deal. Wonderful, well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Robert, thanks you. Thank you. So helpful. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Forrest.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Great questions. So awesome. How do you guys do that? Is there like a little thing over here?
A little face, and you
it's a...
Yeah, three dots.
Oh, the three things, right?
Yeah, over there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You guys are amazing. So huge hugs for all of you. And you guys take care. Thank you, everybody.
Have a great weekend, Forrest.
You too. Brett, thank you so much. Suba, thank you. Oh my God. Suba, you made it to the end. You're amazing. You guys take care, all right? So good to see all of you.